Gonky.
Yes, sir.
The Air India Flight 171 787 crash preliminary report was released. I made a video on my channel doing a complete breakdown. We won't go into that level of depth, but I want to talk to two airline pilots that have obviously had opinions and experiences with flying large aircraft. Anyway, here's the report. I took the liberty of highlighting some stuff because I think that's what we're talking about. There's an SAIB that they reference, Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, and we will talk about that directly later on. But it says the scrutiny and maintenance records for this flight revealed that the throttle control module on this aircraft was replaced in 2019 and again in 2023. However, the reason for the replacement was not linked to the fuel control switch. There has been no defect reported pertaining to the fuel control switch since 2023 on VT A and B, which is the aircraft that happened. So as far as what happened, or at least what we know so far, the accident flight, basically the previous flight had a defect report that said that there was a stab position transducer issue in the tech log. They did some troubleshooting and cleared it to fly. They then went to fly and calculated V speeds at takeoff were 153, 155, 162, which it made. So we kind of talked about whether it was making speed, and it did. As per the EAFR data, which is the black box essentially, aircraft crossed the takeoff decision speed of V1. V1 is the speed at which you can't safely reject the takeoff. So you have to make that decision at that point. That's your decision point. So whether you go or stay. But they reached that at 153 knots at 0833. So 8 minutes, 33 seconds, hour being 08 UTC. The rotation speed was 155 knots. And that happened 2 seconds later, which seems normal to me. And then it transitioned to air mode, consistent with a liftoff 4 seconds thereafter. The aircraft achieved the maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots indicated at about 0842, which, if we're keeping track, is 7 seconds after they reached V1 and 3 seconds after liftoff. And immediately thereafter, so we don't have a specific time, Engine 1 and Engine 2 fuel cutoff switches transition from run, which is the up position, to cutoff. One after the other. They specify one after the other with a time gap of 1 second. So 1, 2 between them. At that point, N1 and N2 began to decrease from their takeoff values as fuel supply to the engines was cut off. In the cockpit voice recording, one of the pilots is heard asking the other, why did he cut off? The other responded that he did not do so. They talk about the ram air turbine was deployed and it began to lose altitude. Per the EFR, the cutoff switch transitioned from cutoff to run at about 52, so minute 0852, which is 10 seconds later. So it took 10 seconds from it going off to going back on. And then the APU inlet door began operating consistent with the auto start logic. Thereafter, 4 seconds later at 56, the engine 2 fuel cutoff switch also transitions from cutoff to run. When they're moved from cutoff to run, while it's in flight, they say FADEC, but it's EECs, automatically manage relight and thrust recovery sequence. Engine 1 core deceleration stopped, reversed, and started to progress to recovery. Because remember, it's slowing down. Now it's speeding back up. Engine 2 was able to relight, but could not arrest the core speed deceleration and reintroduce fuel repeatedly to increase core speed. At 0905, one pilot transmitted Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. The air traffic controller inquired, but they did not give a response. As far as the progress of the investigation, they're still looking. They took fuel samples from the tanks used to refuel the aircraft, and they were found satisfactory. Also, there are no recommendation at this stage of the investigation. So where they know what they know at this point, there's no recommended actions for the 787 or GE Gen X 1B engine operators and manufacturers. There's still more to come. There is an article, Doug, if you've got, do you have that Reuters article? Can you pull that up?
I think that's what's up. Check and see.
Okay. So they're going to look at the fuel switches because of the SAIB, which I will talk about in a second. But FAA and Boeing said that the switches and the locks are safe. And if you scroll down, it basically said there is no, when asked for comment, the FAA does not consider the issue to be an unsafe condition that would warrant an airworthiness directive on any Boeing airplane models, including the Model 787. And they point out, although the fuel control switch's design, including locking features, similar on Boeing airplane models, the FAA does not consider this issue to be an unsafe condition that would warrant an airworthiness directive on any Boeing airplane models, including the 787. And I bring that up, Doug, you can remove that, please. I bring that up because here is the special airworthiness information bulletin that was produced. The background on that is that it affected or applied to owners and operators of 717s, 737-700s, 800s, 900s, Dash 8, Dash 9, 747s, all of them, 757s, 767s, 787, MD-11, and the MD-90. So a wide swath of aircraft. And the background of that is that the fuel control switches on certain 737s were installed with the locking feature disengaged. The fuel control switches or engine start switches are installed in the control stand of the flight deck and used by pilot supply or cut off to the engines. Fuel control switch is a locking feature to prevent inadvertent operation that could result in unintended switch movement between the fuel supply and fuel cutoff position. In order to move the switch from one position to the other, where the locking feature is engaged, and necessary for the pilot to lift the switch up while transitioning the switch position. So you got to go up, out, down, up. If the locking feature is disengaged, the switch can be moved between the two positions without lifting the switch. During transition, the switch could be exposed to potential inadvertent operation. Inadvertent operation of the switch could result in unintended consequences such as engine shutdown. Boeing informed the FAA that the fuel control switch design, including locking feature, is similar. So this is where it directly applied to 737s, but then they said, hey, it's similar on these aircraft. So these are the ones that it's similar on. So they said, hey, if you have this design, inspect. And if you have this specific model with these specific part numbers, you need to replace them. So it was a two-part thing. It applied directly, but they said, hey, monitor, which meant the whole fleet. I mean, it's almost every Boeing aircraft. What that switch is, and just to finish up, I want to get you guys' opinion. I just wanted to set the stage here real quick. This is the TL series micro switch. That's what it looks like. They are independent switches. So they are very different. It's not two that work simultaneously. They're each individual switches. Each switch has 4 mechanically separated channels, 2 of which do electromechanical stuff, and the other 2 feed through the FDR. The EFR basically gets that data. So we'll know decisively through this information whether it was switches or software. Gentlemen, I yield the floor. Sorry for taking so long. I just wanted to put all the pertinent information out there. Gonky, your thoughts are Wombat. Hell, Wombat, take us away.
Well, I have questions, and Mover, you're very qualified to answer them. Before I comment, so you talked about the change in the position to get it from either off to run, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around that, because in an Airbus, it's just you lift, go forward, or you lift and come back, right?
There's a good picture right there.
So it seems, Gonky, am I wrong that looks basically the same as the Airbus? Just so I don't say something stupid. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Additionally, I'm going to make an assumption, which I'm sure will give me lots of hate. But Mover, and I know you don't obviously fly for Air India, but on the 7-8, in the normal sequence of events, okay, so no different than I did today, 80 knots, thrust normal, or whatever you say, V1 rotate, right? Positive brake, gear up, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything in a 7-8 or in a Boeing, for that matter, that would be a multi-switch movement. And what I mean by that is because these switches are not connected, right? It's going to take, so we're all muscle memory. And I know smart people hate when pilots talk about muscle memory, but we refer to muscle memory as something that very intelligent people will tell you is not muscle memory, but it works for us in an aviation world. So my point that I'm getting at is every time I pull back on the stick or the FO pulls back on the stick, there is one movement I'm waiting to do, and that's to get the gear up. It's a one movement thing, and then it's a pause for quite a while before flaps start moving. Is there anything that you can think of in a 787 that would be a multiple actuator movement at that time of flight? Or is it just the same? Gear up, wait as it accelerates to get the flaps.
Yeah, you're going through the exact same call outs. You go from the beginning, right? Thrust set, then you get your 80 call, then you get your V1 rotate, positive rate by the pilot monitoring, gear up by the pilot flying, and then accelerate on the flap schedule, which they were flaps 5, and go flaps 5.
Where is the gear handle in relation to these switches?
On the front panel. The switches are behind the not even close. Yeah.
So it sounds,
I think, I'll just back up 1 second because Blanco Lirio talked about something that I'm familiar with because it's been an emphasis item at some of the airline training, and you might remember this from your training day. I guess you guys at the Airbus, it's not a thing. There was recently an emphasis on guarding the throttles. They didn't want your hand like in your lap or just kind of willy-nilly. They wanted you to be in a position to take the throttles, right? Because from a Boeing perspective, and it may be the same, you're a captain on the Airbus. From a Boeing perspective, when you are the captain, your hand is on the throttle all the way to V1. And at that point, your hand comes off the throttle. If you're not, as it comes off no matter what. As the pilot flying, once before that, so up to V1, you should be guarding the throttles because they don't want them to creep back on their own or, so you got to keep your hand there. A lot of people rest their hand around those fuel controls. And same thing, once you pass V1, a lot of people rest their hands. I know there's video out there of the 787 pilots using both hands on the yoke. That is a technique, not a procedure. I personally, from my sim time, right, and wind shear, V1 cuts, all that stuff, as soon as we are at the rotate, I put my hand on the throttle because I want to be able to toga push if I need the thing to go, if we get into the situation. So, and nobody's ever told me that's wrong because as a fighter pilot, I like to control it because I'm flying the thing. Even though the auto throttles are doing their thing, I still want my hand on there because that physically moves. But there is the I guess speculative statement that guarding the throttles, if your hand could be on those switches or near those switches. But continue. Sorry, go ahead.
The reason why I was desperately trying to get to this undisclosed location to try to be on the show. I knew we were going to talk about this. I was actually called my mom on the way to work and we were chatting about things and this came up and we talked about a few things, her and I, and I want to make it very clear, I want desperately in my heart, and I could say this because it's not my show, so don't get pissed at Mover and Gonky for what I'm about to say, but I want desperately in my heart for this to be an accident and not a deliberate act. I really, really want this to just be an accident that we can learn from. The people's lives are lost at this point. You can't bring them back, unfortunately. I don't want this to be a deliberate act, not for aviation ever, not for aviation now. So I'm trying to go through my head as to why or how those switches would be moved, which is why I had the questions, first of all, because I'm not familiar with the Boeing cockpit. But it does sound like the switch is very deliberate, much like the Airbus, on purpose. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that I don't think I've ever told you, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for telling, but let's be honest, it's been a hell of a career this far. I didn't think it would last this long, so I might as well tell a story. When I was a first officer, we were getting ready, normal flight, getting ready to push back, right? Same way Gonky does it. hey, you're clear to start. Captain goes, hey, start them up. Cool. And it had been a day, it had been an airline day, as we like to call it, where you're just like, I'm exhausted. And then remember, this did happen. This is why I'm piecing all this together. I have a point here. This did happen. What was the timeline of the day? Was it super early? I don't remember.
No,
It was
it
daytime.
was daytime. It was daytime. Their first flight of the day, purported allegedly well rested, took a breathalyzer, like nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing I was curious about was that it's a long flight, and typically when you start getting over 8 hours, it's a 3-man crew, but
Yeah,
there's been
there's
no
only
reports
two
of any jump seaters
of a third.
or
Okay.
FBs.
So in the situation that happened to me, again, I'm the first officer, start them up, cool, and I throw engine 1 to start. Now, Gonky, you've started it at this point in your career at least a dozen times as a joke. I know you fly more than that. And it's very deliberate in an Airbus. Like, it is a lift, flip, and it snaps into position. This particular day, about halfway through the engine start, I moved it forward, and I was like, huh. Like, there was no lift. It just kind of went forward. And I was like, oh, okay. So started the right motor. We finished the pushback. I tell the captain, I go, here's the situation. Like, this is what happened. Like, I moved the switch. It felt like it was in there, but it didn't feel like there was as much of a spring that was holding it down. Now, of course, the captain, which I would even say now, after being a captain 3 years, he's like, I don't touch that switch. Like, if you're telling me it didn't feel right, he's like, you want to go back in the gate? Well, now I'm in this weird place because I'm like, well, I don't think so. Like, there's a notch in there, and I don't know how old this plane, this specific 787 was. I mean, 787s as a whole,
12 years
yeah,
old.
they're not super old planes, right? The plane I was flying was a very old 320. But there's a physical, you can see it when you look at the switch. There is a notch there, right? So we opted to go, right? Because we moved it, nothing, everything's fine, engine's running. We opt to go. As we're bouncing down the runway, now I know that's not the case here. I'm watching this switch vibrate, and I'm like, uh-oh. So I put my hand there to make sure it didn't flip back, right? Take off. We talk about it. He goes, okay, good. We land, ironically, in DC. We taxi in, and I go, hey, I just want to try something with some force. And he goes, okay. So when we went to shut it down, I just put my finger behind it. No lift, just put my finger behind it and pulled, and it popped right off. And that moment there, I was like, if an FO ever tells me, like, hey, the spring doesn't feel right, I'm not going. Like, it was so eye-opening to me. So when I see a situation like this, I'm like, well, but here's the problem. And everybody in the chat that I can't read, I'm sure, is blowing this up and they're talking bad about me. It's fine. But here's the thing. The likelihood of what happened to me happening again is very slim. The likelihood of that happening on both switches is even slimmer, right? I mean, because now you have two, like you said, moving two independent switches. I mean, obviously, there was something worn out. And we told maintenance and they fixed it overnight and it was fine. It's no big deal. But obviously, something was worn out in the number one engine switch. To have them both do that at that moment, like I said, I want this to be a mistake. I just don't know the plane, the training, the history enough to say, like, the FO was thinking this and went this. Like, because
Well, it also should
want
be
it to be a
noted that
mistake.
the switches were found in the up run position after crashing. So whatever force that they crashed with was not enough to move the switches.
Flip them back.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why. So my mind then goes to, okay, what else? If we take the elephant in the room and not discuss it right now for 30 more seconds of what we're all thinking and what I think a lot of people are thinking.
You can talk about whatever you want. It's a free country. We're in America here.
But if you put that aside, like, what could that person have been? What could be the mistake to deliberately go down and move two switches? Forget what switches they are. 1 second apart. And then if it was a deliberate act, and now I'm trying to get into the psyche, which not qualified, but if it was a deliberate act, at that point, why would you say I didn't do it? Like, if you were truly, because let's be honest, there's one of two things that happened here. and again, if I overstep my boundaries, tell me to shut up. But either a mistake was made or is a deliberate suicidal act. Can we say that? I mean, are those the two? Have you heard of
Well,
any other path?
yeah, people are saying, and I disagree with these people, but they are saying that a software anomaly, a Boeing anomaly, the switches didn't actually move, and that's just what the AFR registered. A lot of people want to put the blame on Boeing because
Of course they do.
Boeing, rightfully so, does not have the best reputation because of the MCAS debacle and stuff like that. I just don't think it applies in this situation. I think the 787 in this case was not to blame.
So, okay, so there's three paths. It was a mistake. The software, which again, I can't speak to software. I'm barely a hardware smart enough person, but the software was so screwed up that it registered the switch off and then back on without the switches moving in a sequence that goes, quite frankly, very closely to shut him down. What did you do? On while you're trying to fly the plane.
Yeah.
Right. So that's option B, or option C is this was a deliberate act. And if it was a deliberate act, I go back to why would you say you didn't do it? If you're in a mind state at that point that is so dark, you made your bed, man. Like why try to hide it at that point? It doesn't matter. It's over. Game over. So that's what makes me not want it to do that.
Hold on. You're assuming that the person asking is the person that discovered it versus the person that did it. Like, we don't know that.
I thought,
right?
I thought in one of the reports I read that it said the FO said I did not do it. I
doesn't
thought
say who said what. The report does not say, and they know because they know which microphone was picking up which. They know already. Like, this report is vague, and probably because they've got the criminal side looking at this and the psychological side looking at this, but the report is vague.
Okay.
But I guarantee you they know right now who said what.
So you're saying you're not. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your thought is FO kills him and then says,
"No,
why
I
did
don't
you
think
shut
the
those
FO,
down?"
FO's flaw. Let's let Gonky answer. Gonky, what do you think?
No, well, Mover, you kind of the whole discussion of guarding the throttles. I mean, that's, I guess, we don't do that where I'm at. So my question there is,
it should not be on the fuel control switches. People, what I was saying is people sometimes tend to let their hand, because they don't want their hands pinched by the throttle.
Yep.
If it's a rejected takeoff, so they let their hand kind of settle down, and
when I get my question is when typically. So you're rolling down the runway, right? Captain's got his hands on for the V1 cut if you need it.
Yeah.
Okay, V1, you're supposed to take hands off the throttles. At that point, is that when they transition to guarding?
Yes.
Okay. And then
you don't want the throttles to creep back. You want them to,
But then at what point do they remove them?
I mean, once you're at rotation, you're at rotation, now it's FO flying, the pilot monitoring, or pilot flying is flying, and now the pilot monitoring is now transitioning to positive rate gear up, because they're not going to guard anymore. They're going to go reach forward on the dash, put the gear handle up.
So I guess paint me what do you guys think? Because I'm curious, because I didn't either read enough or understand enough.
No, so like Mover said, so you guys have covered a lot of the things that I'm thinking about, but the report is vague. They're leaving out, in my opinion, just my opinion, I think there's obviously some stuff left out. I find it hard to believe. I mean, just put yourself in that takeoff sequence. If you're the FO, the pilot flying, I mean, I'm staring at center line, waiting for an engine to quit, because I'm going to be Johnny on the spot with the rudder. I'm going to keep it lined up. We're going to airborne, trim it out. I got the whole script in my head ready to go. The surprise factor of it, right? I mean, the startle factor, right? I mean, you take off and then all of a sudden he's not taking off. He's like, what the heck is going on? Right. I mean, the captain, hypothetically, if you were going to try to crash an airplane, I mean, the timeline of events are about as dangerous as you can make it if you're planning on using the cutoff switches to crash that airplane. right where it happened. The whole argument with guarding the throttles, as the captain might, but man, like the odds of him bumping both switches and both switches being
Defective.
worn,
Within
right,
a
and they
second
were
of each other.
right,
And they were still split by a second, so it wasn't
right.
That was
hand
another
swipe,
argument I've seen on my video. People are like, well, you don't know. We don't know the sampling rate. I'm like, we don't know. But the investigators who
know.
wrote the
Yeah,
report,
they know.
who specified 1 second, specified it because they know.
But
Like that was an intentional statement. Go ahead.
but the other
Yeah.
thing is that
Agreed.
those switches were replaced in 2023, right?
No, the throttle quadrant, those switches had not been replaced at least the entire time. Hold on, I'll bring it back up.
The other, while you're looking at that WOMBAT, I mean, just riddle me this, man. If you're the FO flying and you're taking off, and all of a sudden, like the bottom starts to fall out of your seat, you're like, what the hell's going on? I think there would be more of a conversation other than, hey, why'd you shut him off? I didn't. End of conversation. I mean,
well,
I mean, other than being focused on trying to save your life.
Agreed. Where is the throttles in this? And again, I came up with I apologize, Mover, for not being Boeing smart, but so we can take off in a flex or toga, essentially. Those are our two options,
they were in a RTO TO2 or TO1 or something. They were.
So is there more
reduced
throttle? So they were like a flex.
Yeah,
correct?
Usually you
they
do
were
like
D-rate.
a TO1, TO2 D rate. Yeah,
so where
it doesn't say.
was because I mean that to me is, I mean, you talk about where my brain goes. If I just lost thrust, I'm jamming them both forward. I mean, it goes to it's your last ditch effort, right? Like I want everything I can get, and it used to crack me up teaching V1 cuts because guys are like, I don't want to go to toga because what if I over torque the good motor? It's like, dude, if that's your day, it's your day. Like, this isn't the old Mad Dog.
Protections.
Like, you're not.
It doesn't have.
Oh no, there's 100% protections. There's 100%
Yeah.
protections. But it was the old school mentality of the Mad Dog guys that were like, well, I mean, one just failed. I don't want to overwork the other one. It's like, no, I'm gonna get every ounce out of it. So if I had felt both go, like those, in my opinion, those thrust levers in an Airbus would be bent around the toga detent. I mean, I would be doing everything I can to get. I wouldn't be even thinking engine switches because, if your natural assumption is like, yeah, no, of course they're on. So there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about.
To answer your
man.
question, there was no defect reported pertaining to fuel control switches since 2023.
Okay.
So
I mean, but that's kind of what I'm talking about with the cockpit voice recorder. There's reasons why they didn't release it per the investigation. I don't know, but I just think that
cultural thing here, though. Are we thinking like dumb American pilots where, yeah, you better believe if I'm flying with Krusty McCrusterson,
so
and I think just shut it down, I'm going to be like, dude, what the, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to, trust me.
Well,
the cockpit voice recorder on my event would not be kid friendly.
Let me throw something. I'm sorry, I don't want to. Just for clarification, Gonky, because this might help you with this, because Boeing, right? Fly the 787, in case anybody was wondering. Let's say you go. That's the beard. You go fuel cutoff switches to off. Right? What's the pilot? They're going to get an alarm. It's gonna make a loud noise because you're going to get an immediate ICAS message that says engine shutdown. That's all you're going to get, right? It will not say it won't tell you why, because it could be one of two things, for systems. It could be fire switch or the fuel cutoff switches. It could be one of those things, but it means that you're intentionally shut down the engine. So me, having done this hundreds of times in the sim, because I'm a professional sim pilot, I look forward at, as soon as you hear that, if you're not expecting it, the first thing you do is your eyes snap to the flight display and you go, what do I have? Because you're going to see, so there's two indications right now. First, you're going to have the ICAS message. Second, the secondary engine page is going to pop up. That's the other piece. Same. If you're super smart, that's the fuel control because, well, that's a systems thing. But if you're startle factor, not expecting it, what do you think when from hundreds of reps in the sim, what do you think happened? You just had an engine failure. And so to me, the only way to know that the fuel cutoff switches are in cutoff is visually looking. And that's why you would say, why did you cut off? And from that point on, it's all things don't make sense. Because what makes sense to pilots? Fire FOD frozen, engine, something bad has happened. The engine fell off, severe damage. What QRC do I need to grab? But it's not going to register if someone flipped a switch. That's my opinion. Anyway, Gonky, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, dude, there's just some holes, right? So, I talked about I think there's more discussion going on than the report's doing. And then the other thing is, in my opinion, like maybe the captain turned him off. Like, why would he turn him back on? If his
it doesn't say he did.
Turned him back on.
It does not say he did. There's a 10-second gap between when they turned off. Something happened in 10 seconds.
Right. That's
4 seconds between them.
Yeah. So these gaps in time, I think critical things happen that would fill in the story. But if remember Egypt Air, I forget who, one of the pilots, pushed forward on the yoke, the other one was pulling back, and they end up crashing the 7.6. So like in my mind, like if there's a struggle, some sort of struggle on in the cockpit, like one guy wants to crash, one guy doesn't, these switches would be going on and off. There would be some pandemonium going on.
Is there a struggle in the cockpit though? I mean,
I'm just saying
culturally, we've seen mishaps where FOs culturally have just gone, what?
Into the mountain? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's. This is hypothetical, speculative, because I want to address the way people say, well, it can't be done. I've gone to a lot of crappy calls, suicide calls, stuff like that. I've been homicide, suicide. They don't make sense. When you try to add reason, especially when you start talking about narcissists that do stuff, or people that have that mindset that's the point that they've reached, whether it was instant or pre-planned. It's not like you're trying to rationalize things that dude, I looked at a dead dog because the woman killed her adult daughter and killed her dog and herself. Like I can't fathom that. Like I've seen that in real life. She called 911 as she killed her daughter and said, "Y'all come get me," and then killed herself on the phone with the dispatcher. Does that sound like somebody?
No, you can't rationalize irrational behavior.
You can't. And so when you start thinking in this world, right? Why would you do that? Well, like you talked about, Gonky, you did it at the worst possible time because you knew that's the worst possible time. Why would you restart it? Because when the investigators go look at the wreckage, the switches are going to be back and the engines are going to try to run, but you knew there was no chance that they would ever do it. I'm not saying that's what happened, but to answer your question of why, because if you wanted to make it look like an accident, but it wasn't, and you just asked the guy, why'd you do that? To try to throw, oh, I didn't. Okay, well, like there's a lot of things in between.
Well, I can almost take what you're saying, Mover, with the irrational thought, and then I can apply aviators' thoughts, right? And this was something that I saw for years teaching, and you guys, I'm sure, will agree, because when you didn't see this in aviators, it stood out so much. And it's that, jokingly, I literally made this joke today, flying to this undisclosed location. I was like, well, if this happens, I got the rest of my life to figure that one out. And what I mean by that is, like, we were bred, you never quit, right? Like, and very rarely have I seen, mostly in the simulator, where guys just get so beyond their ability that they just are like, I'm done. And you're like, oh, that's not an option, man. Like I would tell guys, I'm going to be the Airbus pilot that's still trying to move the stick, but the fuselage is over there, right? Like I'm not even connected to a plane anymore, but I'm still trying to fly her because I believe in my core I could somehow do it. So now you take a situation like this, and and again, totally speculating, and I hope I'm wrong, but you take a personality that's reached their point of, whichever one it was, they've reached their point of complete irrational behavior, and you put it next to somebody who's in this mentality that they will never quit until the impact. now maybe you do have that where it's like shut them off, and then the other guy's the one who starts them back up, and they're trying to fly. I mean, who knows? Because that's
Well,
all left
Wombat,
out, and I think
Wombat,
that's left out for a reason.
I want to ask you something because you were an instructor at in airline world. In any scenario, have you ever had, other than personality conflicts, but just in general, have you ever had an intentional scenario where the one side is intentionally doing something and you have to discover it?
The only time I would see that at the airlines was when training line check captains.
Because
When
in normal
training line
training,
check captains,
well,
you would do
but what I'm
that. They would do scenarios where one pilot would play bad pilot and do
bad pilot
egregious
or
things.
malicious pilots. I
Wow.
guess what I'm getting
Yeah, I
at
see what you're
is
saying.
look at the startle factor, right? Any emergency, engine failure on takeoff, that's the one we train to the most, and it's still going to be a
Yeah.
little bit of a, like, we always flail through the sim. We get through it
Oh,
because
dude.
we're cooperating. Imagine, put yourself in whichever, let's say one pilot is doing it and the other pilot's not. Put yourself in the one that's completely innocent. Put yourself in that person's shoes. You are, just another Tuesday, taking off, going to Gatwick, worrying about London Heathrow's flow control and all that stuff. And you take off. The first thing you're thinking about is, okay, he's going to say positive rate. I'm going to say gear up. I'm going to do flap protraction schedule. And the next thing you hear is doodle-doodle. And you look down, you see engine shutdown. You go, what the engine shutdown? And you look and you see the guy you're flying with has just intentionally gone to fuel cutoff on those switches that is your life. Tell me you would not. I mean, tell me that wouldn't give you a 10-second pause of going, wait, am I working with this guy? Am I like, or and then he goes, well, I didn't do it, or vice versa. Or he asks you, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing. It's external threats as a team are very easy to manage versus internal threats with two people.
Yeah. I don't know the. Go ahead. Sorry.
There's one piece of this. I mean, there are reports that the captain was having issues with his medical. So there is potentially a mental health piece.
Bring that article up, Doug. The
which, I mean, that
NDTV.
The way. Okay, this guy here. I mean, he's a captain too, right? Mover.
So he said, scroll down. This is from NDTV. Expert stunning claim on pilot's role in crash. He basically says, it cannot be automatically done. Scroll down. Right. He actually talks about knowing the guy.
Knowing the captain, the FO.
The captain,
because captain was the one with some.
He claimed several Air India pilots had informed him that one of the flight crew members had a known medical history and been on extended medical leave prior to the crash. I've heard that several pilots of Air India reported that the captain had a medical condition and was on medical leave for some time. If top management was unaware of this, I'd be surprised because many line pilots knew about it. But they did confirm they were medically certified. Here's a deeper investigation. I don't agree with him on this because plenty of us go out for medical reasons. That does not make us come back and do nefarious things. But there's
a history there of something.
There's something else going on. And what I posted this on X the other day, and a lot of people got mad at me for it, but I'm going to say it again anyway. No matter what the outcome, if it does turn out to be an intentional act, I hope, at least in the U.S., because we've made progress in the U.S., that we do not lose the fight and progress we've made in pilot mental health. Because the typical knee-jerk reaction tends to be going the wrong way. We did it with German wings. We did it after 9/11. Anytime something happens and we're like, we got to do something, we do the wrong thing. So I hope cooler heads prevail no matter what the outcome of this investigation is, that we encourage pilots to get help and to not fly if they're dealing with something versus do some stupid knee-jerk reaction where we say, well, guess what? Everybody gets a psych eval, every year, hide your problems, don't talk to anybody or you lose your medical, all the kind of stuff that could come from something this major.
Dude, the way that report reads, I mean, to cut through all the, I mean, in my mind, the way that report reads is the captain shut the engines, pulled them to cut off at the most dangerous time. And the fact that they said a second, I've watched dozens of captains shut down the engine on the Sky Bus. It's the same. It takes them about a second because it's quick. Boom,
It
boom,
is quick click.
done.
You can do it in less than a second. It's
Done and over. That's right.
doesn't take
And
long.
it's not at the same time. It's in order, right? So
Was it one then two?
left to right.
There's no indication of what order they did it.
Right.
Which
But I mean,
I've argued that you can tell who it was because usually if it's not specified in the checklist, you do the closest one to you.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Is that
yeah?
But
Yeah,
sorry,
so-
didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, so I mean, the way that report reads is everything was pretty normal at the most dangerous. Takeoff is always, generally speaking, the most dangerous part of the flight, anyways.
Sure.
And then, like we talked about in the past, man, the only way, I mean, how are you going to shut down two engines on a 787, the most, safest airliner out there? And he cut the fuel off, and he knew, because he's a captain, he has knowledge of the airplane, that an in-flight restart, especially at those low speeds like that ain't going to happen. So
No.
he knew that, hey, we could put them back on. It's not going to relight. Even if they do relight, which one of them I think actually did relight. Yeah, it's too late. Knowing that the FO, that the pilot flying, in this case, the FO is going to be doing what all flying pilots do on takeoff, which is look outside, maintain runway center line, get into the flight director, get safely airborne, boom, get on the autopilot, and then start flying. So I hope I'm proved wrong on that, but the way that report reads, it reads like that to me, as an outsider.
Yeah.
When you combine a little bit of the medical history, which it's just one man's opinion, but to do something like that, there has to be, kind of like you guys were saying, you can't make sense of it. There has to be something going on there. And then I think that probably certain things were held back that hopefully will be released in the future. And, give them the benefit of the doubt. They still have time and they still have to explore all options. I mean, they owe it to aviation safety, no matter how crazy the idea might be, right? They should investigate it because, apparently this 787 didn't have the camera in the cockpit, right? So we can't see that. But I mean,
yeah, I don't know about that.
It's
it didn't
not
say
reading
one way or the other.
Yeah, it's not reading so well. I mean, and Mover, you made a good point. I mean, Boeing and GE, there have been no sweeping, hey, we need to safety wire the switches to on after each engine start kind of thing, right?
No.
So,
I love giving Boeing a hard time, but I'm not.
Yeah,
this one's not.
Well, especially the fact that, I mean, how many millions of hours between all those airplane types, Mover, that you listed, and then really Skybus uses the same, very similar design.
Yeah,
they're in the exact same location. It's very, you pull up and over. So other than Wombat story, that's the first time I've ever heard of any potential issues with those switches.
Even if you did, something had to hit them.
Right, exactly.
Even if the lockout is locked, something has to, I mean, and then it's just,
there's a mechanical that's
something has to physically move them to that position. The lockout's just keeping it from moving, but they still have to be moved. And okay, like a bump in the runway. Well, it survived a crash. So
right.
And the landing gear handle was down, which means they never got to that part in the checklist. Right.
Yeah.
This happened. They say 180 knots is when they see it, but I mean, obviously they're accelerating as they climb out. So who knows when this happened, but
what I was going to say, and I don't know the way how their country does this compared to like the FAA. I hope that all the info comes out. Like, I hope there's nothing, and I'm not suggesting that somebody would cover it up on a governmental level, but like the FAA, I mean, if it was legit nefarious, if it was, the most selfish act you could possibly do with that many people behind you, like, it would be reported. I want to believe, like, it would be like, this is what we found, this was deliberate, because people would learn from it. I mean, I just hope that it's the same type of report.
Well, Aren't they part of like the EU, right? That so they're on a timeline, like as far as the investigation goes. I think
Like all the
they're
ICAO
held.
stuff has to.
Yeah,
they're not part of the EU.
no,
No,
I mean
but
they're
it's-
flying.
ESA.
They're flying rules that they abide
Yeah.
by.
Well, they have to in order to go to these countries. Like you
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I mean, to me, the preliminary report said more than I expected it to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I honestly was waiting for, so, you know, kudos to the Indian government for being this transparent
100%.
because I did not
Yeah.
expect this level of detail. Like everybody's like, there's a cover up. I expected a synopsis of on this date, this happened and we were investigating. And I did not expect about the fuel cutoff switches or what was said. Like they could have left all of that out and just said,
that's true.
100%.
preliminary indications show that
Yeah.
the fuel cutoff, you know, the engines were starved and attempted a relight. And they could have stopped right there and not said anything about the 1 second between them. They could have said nothing about. Now, granted, they did put their little spin on it by putting the SAIB in there, which I still think is not applicable. But, you know, it's obviously something that should be looked at.
Yeah, I hear you. Maybe it's in there to show that it's not applicable, though. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
maybe
they
it would be a
considered it.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, we looked at this because you know how everybody's going to Monday morning quarterback this or whatever they Monday morning cricket it or whatever it is in India. But so maybe the whole point is like, hey, I know you're going to say this, and we looked at this, and this does not apply. I don't know, you know, because it is.
Well,
I mean, it covers a large amount of Boeing aircraft, so it's not, you know.
Interesting. It doesn't cover the 777. I wonder why. 777's got a very similar looking, like what makes it different.
Yeah, it is weird. I wonder if there's like some sort of electrical difference. I don't know. I'm not Boeing smart, nor will I ever be.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Trimming.
I'm tired of talking about this.
I'm sorry. The whole thing makes me really sad.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
extremely
the thing, the bottom line is 230 people, well, plus the people on the ground, lost their lives that day, you know, and it didn't matter if you were in first class or at the back. It's the same outcome, and it's tragic. And it's terrible for those families, and it's terrible for if it is a nefarious act. And I know it was a single pilot doing a one bad thing. I feel for that other pilot's family for not knowing.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, people like us are saying, well, you know, it doesn't look, but I mean, there's one family that's grieving the loss of their loved one with that hanging over their head. That's the part, you know, you want immediate answers and immediate justice. And I've talked about this before when we talked about the unfortunate case at DCA with Rebecca Lobach. You know, people want a villain, people want answers, but they also get mad, and then they go after you know, they say things about these people and the families and stuff like that, and families are just trying to grieve.
Yeah, it can get ugly.
Yeah.